G'day, I'm Chris and this is Game Chambers. So I played in another tournament over the weekend. It was BBB's Subfaction tournament. I chose Everest and our first match was up against RTK Human Boy with his faction choice of Clan Eshin. Now this one I thought, I forgot to actually click record, but I managed to save the replay. So we're going to have a bit of a look at it because I made quite a lot of mistakes here, all the way from army building into how I actually played the game. So let's have a look at what we have on either side here. So I've gone for a front line of Silver and Guard, backed up with some Rangers. Now my thinking here was probably flawed, but I was thinking the Silver and Guard, they've got the magic resistance, they've got the missile block chance. They might do quite well against Skaven's ranged play, but they also lack any real killing power, and they are still quite vulnerable to Skaven mortar teams and AoE type attacks because they've got a very dense formation. The Rangers, the thought behind those was they're going to chop through the Skaven slaves and the Skaven infantry. I've then backed them up with a couple of units of War Lions. I've kept these back. What I was thinking with the War Lions was I could use them to deal with any flanking Skaven and then use them to also jump on Rat Ogres to sort of flank around. Use them basically like wolves, but that have got a much higher point count per model. Hopefully make them less vulnerable to some of the Skaven artillery and make them more capable at taking out Skaven skirmishers and that sort of thing. I went with Eltharion. Big mistake I made with Eltharion was putting him on his Hippogriff. Skaven has the ability to lock down flyers and they have very good missile play and they could easily shoot him out of the sky, and we'll see how that actually goes. To deal with the Skaven backline, I went with 3 Eltharion Reavers and I had a few extra points, so I upgraded one of them to the Heralds of the Wind. And the idea there was to use them to try and harass the backline and skirmish down Rat Ogres and other sort of low armor targets. My opponent, Human Boy, yes. This is the second time I've played against him, against his Skaven, and he's definitely a Skaven main. He's gone with a front line of slaves to protect his firing line, which was made up of poisoned wind globadiers, rattling guns, mortars, and Jezzails. So it's a very heavy missile core. So I'm going to take a lot of damage on the way in, and you can see he's sort of formed them in this half circular formation here, so you can sort of focus them in whichever direction I come from. So we'll get the battle underway, although we should have a look at the rest of the stuff he's got. I believe he's got Deathmaster Snitch. No, he's got a Grey Seer of Ruin, and you can see down the bottom here he has the Howling Warpgale, which is what is going to lock down my flyers. So my flyer being Eltharion. So immediately I see that it's a missile army, which I was expecting. So I rush forward. I might have been better off with White Lions instead of Silver and Guard if I was going to go for this style of rush, and probably a Lord not flying as well. So we can see here the Teethbreakers drop their concealment bombs so that I can't do any sort of ranged attacks on them. And I think that actually was a good move because I believe I had just queued up a Soul Quench on them, so that would have dropped my order there for Eltharion, so now I've got to move him in and reissue that order. So I'm bringing in Eltharion on the right hand flank, I'm bringing in the cavalry on the left hand flank while I bring the rest of my army forward. I'm keeping the lines back in case there are any skirmishes, but I also realised I don't have any back line to protect, so I'm going to be able to bring them forward into the fight. So we can see here the Grey Seer is on this flank. That's something I should have been more aware of. And he's also bringing his Jezzails to face towards Eltharion as well. My front line is forming up, heading towards him, and he's sending the Plague Priest in, which is probably to drop down a distraction unit to slow down my advance. Because he's got the summons. If we have a look at our Plague Priest here, he has the Vermintide and Pestilent Breath ability, so he can drop down Skaven clan rats and he can also try and nuke down some of my units. So that Pestilent Breath will be quite good against the Silver and Guard. Now here we go, Eltharion is trying to fire off a Soul Quench. Not sure what I'm shooting at in here. I think I was going for the missile unit, the Teethbreakers. No, I must be going for the Poisoned Wind Mortars. So I thought was to try and get around on a flank to try and get multiple targets, but because of the high altitude it doesn't hit as many as it would have if I was just mounted on horseback. Now the Grey Seer is coming in because he's got the Teethbreakers right here, who are still invisible, and they are rattling guns, which do quite good damage at short range. So we can't... Can we see their range? Yep, so we can see their range marker is here. Eltharion is within their range marker at the moment. Over on this flank, the Eltharion Reavers are coming in. I'm trying to use them to attack these Warplock Jezzails. And here we go, here it is. On the right-hand flank, Howling Warpgale is going down as the Teethbreakers open fire on Eltharion. Now at this range, their accuracy is not the best, but they are still going to put down some damage on him. And over here, the Jezzails are trading into these Reavers a lot better than I expected them to. So I didn't consider the fact that they had silver shields. That's definitely something I did not take into account when I was trying to flank them with the Reavers. And they also have 70 armor, so that makes them in a frontal engagement quite effective at chasing off Eltharion Reavers. So as you can see here, they've dropped this one by about a quarter of its health, and the other two have, or all three of them have only done minimal damage to those Jezzails. Eltharion over here is taking significant damage from those Teethbreakers, and the Howling Warpgale has just pinned him in place. He's going to take even more damage there. I believe I drop an Apotheosis to keep him alive. In the central engagement, you can see the Clan Rats have been dropped in to slow my advance, and we'll get this back up to full speed. And the Mortars are now coming in, so these are going to be devastating to my infantry. So even though the Silver and Guard, well, actually they're resisting it quite well, so their armor and magic resist is actually resisting the mortar fire quite well, which is good. I'm trying to keep these Reavers moving. I realise I'm losing that engagement with the Jezzails, and I don't want to get caught out by the Rats, so I'm moving them around while I'm still pushing up the front line here. And you can see they're taking a fair bit of damage from the Skaven artillery. These Rangers are dealing quite well with the Clan Rats, but I still need to keep pushing on forward. Eltharion, I activated the Fang Sword of Eltharion. Again, actually does work in this situation. So the Teethbreakers do physical damage. They're one of the few Skaven units that doesn't do magic damage, aren't they? No, Jezzails don't do magic either. Okay, I thought there was more magic damage going on here. So the Fang Sword actually should have been popped earlier for those Teethbreakers. You can see the Teethbreakers are switching on to the War Lions, which is a good choice because they are going to rip them down very quickly. I am trying to bring them in to deal with the Teethbreakers, while the Reavers on the back are still trying to deal with those Jezzails, so they should have really separated them, maybe tried to use them to come in and flank these Mortars, or even try and get them into melee with the Warblock Jezzails. At this point, I hadn't realised yet the Jezzails have got silver shields, and there's no very good trade at all for my Reavers. Front line is getting engaged here. There is a Scorch going down here, and you'll see this does fairly decent damage against the Rangers as it comes across here, taking off about a fifth of their health. And you can see I'm trying to get engagements here to get onto those ranged assets. Eltharion should have pulled back at this point. I know he's got Howling Warpgale, I know he's got significant missile fire. I should be bringing him back. The War Lions get caught out, they get shot down and they break. These Rangers are going to come in on these slaves, and these ranged War Lions here are actually going to get in on the Teethbreakers. You can see I'm losing the frontline fight across the board. These Poisoned Wind Globadiers doing absolutely fantastic damage to the Silver and Guard, despite their shields and magic resistance. I'm not 100% sure, but they might actually... Let's see if it says anything. Well, the damage over time will ignore the shields, but the bombs themselves may also ignore the shields because they do little mini explosions. We got another really nice Scorch here going down on the Silver and Guard. Magic resist turns out is not a bad choice. It just protects them quite well from the magic and the mortars, but doesn't help much against the Poison Wind Globadiers. They still seem to do significant damage. Up here, Eltharion has copped another Howling Warpgale, and this is where we'll see the Jezzails and the Teethbreakers will turn back on them. So the Rat Ogres were able to come in and protect the Teethbreakers from Rahaga's Pride, and the rest of my units are getting forced back, and Eltharion just gets absolutely eviscerated here in the sky by all this missile fire. And in the back line, the Reavers managed to see off the Hounds or the Wolf Rats, but it's too little too late. Basically, I've lost my entire front line at this point. Eltharion is broken, soon to be dead, everything is fleeing, and we basically, army losses kicks in, and that is the end of that fight. And that's just a matter of waiting for everything else to flee. So, I definitely got schooled very well by Human Boy yes there. Let's have a look at the numbers. I made a few critical mistakes, both in my build and in my play. So Eltharion probably shouldn't have been mounted on Stormwing. Probably should have kept him on horseback if I was going to use him. Would have meant he couldn't have been hit with Howling Warpgale. Could have then ridden with maybe some Silver Helms or some other cavalry units to try and protect him a little bit from missile fire. The Silver and Guard were actually held out quite well, but they did not do very well against the Poisoned Wind Globadiers. So if you look at these Globadiers, so they didn't get massive amounts of value. Most of it, I think, was on the Jezzails. Yeah, the Jezzails here got massive value, as did the Teethbreakers and the Poison Wind Mortars. So I probably would have been better off, if I was going to go for a rush, to go with the White Lions. Then maybe give them a Lawmaster in the middle to try and boost that magic resistance. Maybe even bring along a Noble for some extra missile resistance if I was going to attempt to rush into the Skaven line. The problem with the White Lions, or especially with the Silver and Guard are not going to cut through Skaven slaves. They were not going to die to Skaven slaves. As you can see, the slaves did basically nothing in that frontline engagement, but that's not what they're there for. The Skaven slaves are just going to hold up the Silver and Guard while these ranged assets do all the damage, and that's exactly what happened. So I didn't have enough to chew through what he had, and look at these rangers. They got 51 kills, 57 gold value. Which is, they got plenty of kills, but their value is nothing because all they did was hack through slaves. And so even the rangers, while they were able to get through the slaves, they weren't even able to get their value back. And I don't think anyone actually did get value back in this game. Ragra's Pride did alright, but they did get onto the Teeth Breakers for a little bit before the Rat Ogres came in to save them. So there you have it. Definitely, I think I should bring more cavalry and even more ranged. So you cannot shoot Jezzails with Eltharion Reavers. Demonstrated pretty resoundingly that the Jezzails will win that engagement one-on-one, especially, or even one-on-3, they were doing quite well for themselves. So if I'm going to try and deal with Jezzails, I'm going to need my own ranged assets, or I'm going to need melee cavalry to get into close combat with them, because those silver shields and that 70 armor, plus their own significant range damage was too much. Eltharion needs to come back on the ground if I am going to field him, either on horseback or on foot even, so that would negate the effects of the Howling Warp Gale, and will also make him a less easy target and make it easier for him to hide either within cavalry or infantry. I'll definitely be trying to play against Human Boy again. I do look forward to learning more about this game. There are a lot of players out there that know a lot more about this multiplayer than I do. I have many hours, but I am still very much behind the 8 ball when it comes to knowledge of matchups and what different things are capable of doing. So thanks for watching with me. That was my first and only game of that tournament, and Human Boy, yes, managed to knock me out and carried on with the rest of it. So I look forward to our next matchup, and see you in the next video.